Greetings and welcome to Enigmatic. I hope everybody's doing well on this Tuesday. I am relaxing just a little bit while I explore what I'm going to do with my life. And, part of what I want to do with my life entails how to live in and navigate what feels like a very artificial world relative to what we deal with our fellow humans. You go on Instagram, and there's no telling how many filters or edits are put on a given picture. And the standard of beauty is put on blast and put on this pedestal. And everybody wants to fit it, men and women alike. And so we fake it, right? There's a certain part of us that's okay with people believing a facade, or at least that's what we tell ourselves. I don't know if people are actually okay with that. I think people would want things to be a reality, but we're prone to fall into our own delusions. It's kind of interesting. I did see, one video on Instagram where this woman, I get a lot of fitness stuff. So I see one woman, she's like, help me pick out an outfit. And the way she was going about it from the very beginning, I knew something was up. So I stuck it out. And she said about halfway through, after she showed several outfits, what if I told you that in every single one of these pictures or every single one of these videos for every outfit I want to show you has been edited? And then she shows like the edits that she put in. And it was, her editing was pretty seamless, especially since she decided to do her videos against a blank wall. So there's no frame of reference to show where there's like lines bending that shouldn't be bending. You can tell with a lot of pictures whether they're photoshopped or not just by looking at what should be straight vertical lines, and if they're still straight and vertical when they're near, say, a woman's waist, because women like to make their waist a bit more snatched. Or on a man, if they're rounded, kind of, if the lines are rounded like his shoulders are a bit more, because some men will Photoshop in order to make it seem like their deltoids are bigger than they are. And, I think that this also, goes back a lot further, because I remember being a little kid and asking my dad, and this was partly because I didn't have like the vocabulary to really say what I wanted. But I asked my dad, watching an advertisement, because they're like, call now or buy now. And it's always so pushy. It's always, so demanding. And I already had kind of, weird feelings because of my dad and, authority. So I asked him straight up, why are they always telling us what to do? And because there's a certain aspect of that that's manipulative, because we're trusting creatures. It's kind of crazy. We're like deceitful creatures and we're also trusting creatures. It's kind of a fucked up paradox. But what I was really like getting at is like, why are they trying to, push us so hard to buy their product? Which I get it, it's marketing. Companies need to be able to sell their product in order to stay in business and for them and their employees to make a living and things like that. But it's just so pushy. And then the other thing about it is I kind of look at advertising as inherently dishonest. It's at least not telling the full picture. It's hard to sell. To most people, it's hard to sell things if you're completely honest about it. You can't say what is negative about your product. You have to paint the picture like it's perfect. Which, that's another reason why I ask, like, how do we live in this artificial world? Because people are okay being told a fantasy and operating off of that fantasy. I'm not okay with it, but by proxy of what we can see in society and how prevalent some of the things that I'm talking about are, seems like a lot of other people are okay with it, or they just don't realize it, or they don't want to think about the implications of it. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't really focus too much on them. I guess like that focus comes up because I would like to be able to, connect with people more, but it's hard when, everything feels so artificial. Going back to social media or even just the media, everybody thought that Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith had such a great marriage, and they based, aspects of reality off of things that they see about celebrities. A lot of people do this, and that's all a facade as well, but we fall for it every single time. For a variety of reasons, some good, some bad. The government lies to us. Um, you know, some of the bad reasons is to keep secrets in order to increase manipulation or to pad the pockets of oligarchs. Some of the good reasons is to, prevent chaos and havoc, because they know what a response to certain types of information would be. But, they have to be inherently dishonest. They're also artificial. Artistry is changing a whole lot right now. Every single mode of artistry is changing right now, and that's because of AI. AI can even, mimic brushstrokes, so it's hard to tell, And I mean, counterfeit art's already been an issue, but now we can pretty much ask AI to completely replicate something for us, and not only that, we can also have it make up things that we didn't make up, and say it's our work. For example, I for a project that I have, I'm posting these pictures and I write a little blurb about them, and then I run the blurb I wrote through AI, and then I put that for my post. However, everybody knows that I'm using AI to write these pieces. I feel that it would be inherently dishonest for me to not say I used AI, because the way in which the AI writes what I wrote that's not me. So to say that, oh, I wrote that, no, AI wrote that. I gave AI the ideas and it wrote it for me. We can't take credit for using words and having certain types of syntax that we don't readily use and have. That's, to me, that's dishonest. That's not the case. It's not your work. And if I can apply this to writing, then I think I can apply it to almost any other art medium. And I think that it waters down what makes those arts, the arts that they are. But also it's that much more inauthentic. We're not doing it anymore. We're even offloading our creativity to something else now, because we're, desperate in certain ways for things to be a certain way. We really want to have this depiction. And then we also want to have credit for that depiction. So how do we, again, how do we live in this like artificial world? And I'm trying to figure it out. I'm kind of at a point right now where I'm like, I just want to revamp my life and how I think about myself and how I see myself. And, a lot of the things that I brought up, they hit us in the subconscious. We don't even realize that they're there in some regards. And so one thing that, I'm leaning towards with regards to how do we navigate an artificial world is, one, find people that we feel are authentic with us and align ourselves with them. Find, resonance and harmony with these individuals. And they're likely going to be few and far in between, because we're all trapped in the same milieu, and a lot of us don't necessarily see what's going on. We don't see some of these implications. We don't see some of these impacts. And so by virtue of that, people are going to kind of end up parroting what they see and become that much more artificial, that much more cookie cutter, that much more ready to be a grifter. That's a big thing right now. People grifting. That the whole alpha male scenario that went by over the past several years, like that was just one big grift of, people that had money and that saw what was going on, taking advantage of disenfranchised men or men that felt disenfranchised. That entire thing was a facade. And we're still dealing with the aftermath of that, but it padded plenty of pockets. Again, we're deceitful creatures, but we're also so trusting. And it's hard. But another thing I think that, everybody can do, and there's a reason that I put the first one first, but the second thing is, I think that turning inwards, being with silence, being away from screens, feeling the anxiety and, the thoughts of anxiety that arise when we aren't attached to our phones as much anymore. I know for me, one of the excuses my subconscious likes to pop into my conscious mind is the idea of, oh, what if some emergency happens and I'm away from my phone so I don't notice it. And that's just an excuse. Like I need more fucking time away from my phone. Like there were periods in life, for me, I was born in 88. There's periods in life for me where, yeah, you didn't always have the ability to always contact somebody. I want to get used to that again. I have an MP3 player. And I think, every now and then I'm going to start leaving my phone at home and just taking my MP3 player to the gym. Gym's a couple miles away. Worst case scenario, something comes up and I can't make it home, I can walk back or take the bus. Like, fuck it. But I need this clarity of mind. And I think that we all need this clarity of mind. But it's hard for us to admit that. We're change is constant, but we're very stubborn to change. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does make certain things harder than they need to be for us. So, aligning with people that, you really resonate with, turning inwards, being with yourself. I think number 3 is finding what you love and doing what you love. And I say finding because that's where I'm at right now. I know I love my mom and my sister and my friends, but because of certain things that I deal with, there's a hard time to like lean on that, right? So I love psychedelics. I've been doing a lot of work with allowing myself with that, but I also love music. I have a complicated relationship with music, so I'm just kind of learning a whole new instrument. It's a steel tongue drum. And that brings me peace, that brings me happiness, and it brings me, something that I would like to share that is meaningful and that, elicits real feeling. Because like part of the reason that everything is artificial, because we're trying to numb ourselves all the time. Oftentimes when we reflexively pick up our phones to look at Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, whatever, a lot of times when we do that, it's our subconscious giving us a cue. It's like, oh, something's coming up in the mind. We don't want to deal with it. So here's a cue. Here's something for you to do. We like to, trace it back to dopamine a lot of times because we live in a paradigm that is heavily materialist and physicalist. So people need to, they're only satisfied by explanations that fall within those frameworks. This is something that I've like thought about like a lot for a while, and because I have my own social issues and things. And sometimes I feel that it's because of how I look at things, and this is an incentive for me to share what I'm sharing today. But at the same time, like I feel jaded and I feel bitter because of this facade that I feel like I'm dealing with, and that brings me to the last thing that I think is very important for everybody, and that's getting back out in nature. And that's not to say that we're not in nature of sorts when we are, in urban centers and things like that, because we have to keep in mind that like all the metal that is used for your appliances and, scaffolding and things like that was ore of a mountain, and we consider mountains, nature. We just extracted it from that place, right? So like nature is all around us. We just don't see it that way because we're not conditioned to see it that way. And so that's why I say getting back out into nature so that we can feel that energy. We can feel what we would consider to be actually natural. I say it that way because we as humans like to put ourselves on this pedestal as if we're not natural or if what we do isn't natural. But if a bird's nest is natural, and everything we do is natural too. That includes the automobile and psychopharmacology. And the other thing too about it, like, because it's interesting, there's a divide in the 5-MeO DMT community about using 5-MeO DMT from the Bufo avarius frog or from synthetic sources, because you can synthesize it. And there's a lot of people there, that they like to parrot the naturalist argument. And the naturalist argument entails that, they only do what's natural, and like natural is better and natural is safer. And it's like, well, hurricanes are natural, tornadoes are natural. There's plenty of natural poisonous plants that will kill you, but if you're going to go ahead and go off of that reasoning, you can. But then you have people that use synthetic 5-MeO, and it's looked down upon by certain people because it's quote unquote not natural. But it is natural. I mean, we learned biosynthesis from plants. That's why we're able to synthesize drugs. We know plants do it, so we're like, maybe we can do it too. So sorry, that was a little bit of a segue, but and I don't even know where I'm going to go with this now. So thanks for being here with me. I think I am going to go and take myself a little nap. I did get a biopsy yesterday on my leg, and it kind of hurts, and it's just on my mind right now, and it's hot out. So I thank you all for listening. Um, Go touch some grass. Be good to you. Be good to others. Take care of yourself. Oh, and give me a like, a subscribe. I appreciate it. Oh, and share. Forgot about that part too. Take care.